Questions to the Cabinet Member will now be taken. Question number 12, Councillor Carpenter.
To the Council. The Cabinet Member.
I thank Councillor Carpenter for the question. It's an unusual question. It's a list. It's a fishing expedition, isn't it? The one thing which does seem to knit all of these questions, these sub-questions A to F together, is that they're asking just for the financial element. There's absolutely no attempt to determine the value to the community of any of these activities and how one might evaluate that. And there's also absolutely no attempt to find out how we might innovate and improve them. It's just not in their DNA, is it? So I conclude that this is really just an attempt at political mischief. So the answers are laid out here. I don't propose to read them out. Everyone can do that, but I would particularly like to emphasise the position with libraries, and I'd invite the party opposite to desist from its cynical campaign, which is printed in the current edition of the Wandsworth Guardian, highlighting a threat which simply does not exist. I would also highlight the review of the graffiti service, which is now underway. We haven't got a conclusion yet, but this strikes me as an absolutely perfect example of why we should review everything systematically and regularly, because it's been a tremendous success, and anybody can see that it's time to ask the question whether we really need to spend so much taxpayers' money, because the job, to a very large extent, is now done. Dog control, the position I think is very clear, and street cleansing, the question was so imprecise that it was impossible to give it an answer.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank the Cabinet Member for his response. I take it from the detail provided in some of these that there will be shortly brought forward papers to committee covering the Battersea Sports Centre, the graffiti service and the dog control service. Can you confirm that?
Well, I think it's fairly clear that all of these things and that have appeared on a list elsewhere are moving at different speeds. So yes, that would be a fair assumption.
Second supplementary. Can the Cabinet Member give a cast iron guarantee that the out-of-town centre libraries will be open for the rest of the lifetime of this Council?
A very interesting source of that question. Well, I mean, we can't give cast iron guarantees stretching years ahead, can we? We don't know what's going to position's going to be years from now. Got a general election next year. Obviously, I've got a very strong view on where I hope that goes, but no, I can't give absolute cast iron guarantees, and I think the Councillor knows that very well.
I thank the Councillor for her question. I have indeed read the J report, and the one thing that isn't in the answer, which talks about what we've done, is that one thing that is quite striking about the inquiry into Rotherham was that they had all the paperwork in place to avoid these things happening. And so one of my extra efforts has been to make sure that we not just have the procedures and the paperwork in place, but it is understood and that all officers and everybody involved with safeguarding does actually react to it. Anyone just looking at Rotherham from the outside and looking at the reports would have thought that they had done enough, and patently they hadn't. Well, of course, there is going to be a further inquiry into more detail, because it rather looks as though there was a conspiracy of silence between all the leaders, both police and political. Your final point about the complete lack of respect for the children is, of course, probably the most poignant, and that is something I certainly have worked very hard on while I've been doing this job, is to make sure that we do hear the voice of the youngsters. It also perhaps ought to be pointed out that one of the problems at the beginning of the Rotherham problems was that these girls were, complicit is perhaps the wrong word, but they didn't realise they were being abused. And it's up to professionals to actually identify vulnerable and abused youngsters and persuade them of a different course. And that is something that we do and we take very seriously. It's the exact opposite in Wandsworth. We've already had discussions with the Chief Superintendent. And one thing that came up from that discussion, which is just of interest to people, because it's something I wasn't aware of before that meeting a couple of weeks ago, there are now at least 2 hotels in Wandsworth where you can book a room online and they give you a pass key to let you in, and you just press the number in the door. You don't have to see anybody at reception. You might just completely go without noticing. And both hotels have now been visited, and we are insisting that they have very visual CCTV to make sure that they aren't used as forms of child abuse or residences for it. But it is actually quite a worrying route that we're all going down.
Councillor Ambash, yes.
Supplementary, Mr. Mayor. I've been involved in working in care services and safeguarding since the early 1970s. Since then, there have been some 30 inquiries into deaths of children and organised and sexual abuse situations, from Maria Cornwell, Jasmine Beckford, Cleveland inquiry by Lady Blacklosh, Baby P, and now Rotherham. One of the very common themes from all the inquiries is poor interagency communication. They often key players are social workers, health visitors, teachers, school nurses, doctors and police. Communication in this area is really important. It saves lives. So I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member, how would she assess the effectiveness of interagency communication in the field of child protection here in Wandsworth? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ambash is absolutely correct that the underlying problem with all these issues has been lack of passing on information between the different various agencies. And although we have a lot of multi-agency committees, both the main safeguarding board, and we also have obviously subcommittees of that where all the different agencies meet, I don't think I can be 100% confident that all the information that might be needed is passed on. And it is something that we are working very hard on. There does seem to be a difficulty in some of the information the police will pass to the NHS, and that the NHS will then pass to us. And we are trying to break down that barrier, but it is a matter of very large bureaucracies, not actually all having the same computer system or whatever, but also just not being willing, for various reasons, to share information. But we are working on that as best we can.
Question number 14. I'd like to thank Councillor Gibbons for his question. In the case of part 1 of the question, this actually is raised quite often at the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and the answer is always the same, which is that there's actually no evidence to suggest that welfare reforms are responsible for the exodus of people from the private rented sector, and in fact the largest reason given by landlords, so they're not obliged of course to give a reason at all, but the largest reason given is that they want the property for themselves. I suspect the next time the question is asked, that answer is unlikely to be changed very much. In the cases of parts 2 and 3 of the question, certainly, of course, it is clearly disruptive for children if their parents move. Obviously, parents will often move in any case. I think the average household stays in the house for around about 5 or 6 years. So over most children's period of schooling, there is likely to be a house move. Clearly, it's disruptive for the children, and clearly parents and local authority will do all they can to make that move as sort of painless as possible for the children concerned. I do actually think most children are quite resilient, and indeed many people probably in this chamber found that their parents moved for job reasons or whatever. In my own case, it was to another country for a few years. I think we all cope quite well with it.
Supplementary. I think many of us will be obviously very concerned to find out that we have 600 families in temporary accommodation who will have to move, and that could be up to 1,400 kids. So in the light of this, we're now looking at actually seeking to place people in more out-of-borough accommodation. So will the Cabinet member assure me that continuity of schooling will be an important factor in considering allocations of housing, and particularly that families will get priority, families with school-age children will get priority when it comes to keeping them local and enabling them to continue in the schools where they started?
I'd like to thank Councillor Gibbons for his supplementary. I think actually what is most important is that the families concerned are given accommodation that is suitable to their needs. And in some cases, I'm afraid that is going to mean that people will not be able to live in the areas where they would choose to live. You know, we are now faced with some extremely large families coming to us from the private rented sector. We do not simply have houses in Wandsworth of the size to cope with families of anything up to 10.
Could the Cabinet member explain how much money has been allocated to purchase larger family properties for use as temporary housing, and has he any idea how many families with school-aged children this may assist in the future?
I'd like to thank Councillor Cooper for a supplementary. The Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee agreed and recommended and the Executive approved expenditure of £10 million as an initial budget for purchasing out-of-borough larger properties. I believe we are due to complete on 5 properties at the moment. That may seem very modest, but obviously this is very early days. We also, of course, use a number of our own properties to house families to avoid them having to go into bed and breakfast, which I think is very unsuitable accommodation for anybody, let alone anyone with children.
Thank you. Question 15, Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question 15 for the Cabinet member.
I thank Councillor Madden for the question. Well, yes, I mean, absolutely delighted to congratulate the team involved, led by Mary Rose Page. A hugely complex project, very, very tight site, tight timescales, and they came in 2 weeks ahead of time. Just absolutely tremendous performance, and I've had a lot of members of the public contacting me to say, well done, do pass it on to the team. Tremendous, very proud of them.
Mayor. Mr. Mayor, in light of the answer the Councillor has just given, and taking into account my question number 25 and the written answer, can we commence immediate negotiations with Network Rail and South West Trains and offer Mary Rose Page and her team to them to run their project at Putney Station, which is now at least 6 months in arrears, preferably for a very large fee?
I thank Councillor Madden for a very good supplementary question, and yes, but they would have to pay, wouldn't they? Funnily enough, a number of Putney residents have said exactly the same thing to me in emails. How is it that you can complete a large, complex project inside a very tight time scale, and the station, well, heaven knows what's going on. I have made my views very clearly known publicly. Yes, if only we could get it moving.
Yes, certainly.
Yes, I too would like to congratulate this 3-month programme, or less than 3-month programme. But if we can do this in 3 months, what if it takes nearly a year to put double glazing into one of my set of blocks in Roehampton, and double glazing into a block in West Putney where I live? Can we, again, get closer to home, use our own project management to perhaps manage our own projects better?
Well, I thank the councillor for that second supplementary question. If I'm not mistaken, question 15 is about Putney Bridge, and that was what I was responding to. I really don't see the connection.
Yes, question 16, Councillor Critchard for the Cabinet Member for Community Services, please.
I thank Councillor Critchard for this question. I'm very keen on recycling, and I think we're much better at it than this question implies. I would start by cautioning Councillor Critchard to rely too heavily on anything she sees in the Wandsworth Guardian. They do have a habit of getting the wrong end of the stick. And this is just such a case. I saw the article that's referred to. They've stripped it of any context, thus that it is fairly meaningless. I was tempted to write to them, but if I wrote to them every time they did that, I'd never get anything else done. They have completely missed the fact that as an inner urban borough, we have a particular challenge with houses, multiple occupation, and particularly with high-rise properties. And if you look at the map that's published in the Wandsworth Guardian, it's very clear that the other councils in the Western Riverside Waste Authority have a very similar, in fact, H&F is identical, very similar recycling rate to us. As you go further out, people tend to have bigger gardens. Many people, of course, in Wandsworth don't have a garden at all. But as people get bigger gardens, they generate more green waste, which bumps up the recycling figures. So it should come as no surprise that the council in the country that is absolutely top of the heap, number one for recycling, is South Oxfordshire District Council. So, of course, none of that was in the Wandsworth Guardian. So that's that part of it. The second part was really very, very curious, that Merton is held up as some sort of paragon of recycling virtue, which is an interesting thought because they still indulge in the quaint, old-fashioned habit of burying their rubbish in holes in the ground. Which we stopped doing a long time ago. We have a state-of-the-art energy recovery facility, and if one includes the incinerator bottom ash that comes out of that and the fly ash that comes out of that, our recycling rate goes to nearly 50%, which is one of the best, and it's one of the best facilities in the country. Very, very modern. So I find it rather strange to have Merton compared with us in any way.
Supplementary.
Yes,
the Cabinet Member has mentioned a specific date for the outcome of the waste compostation analysis. When's that?
I thank the Councillor for the supplementary. Yes, this is the analysis. I don't think we've got an exact date, but it's fairly soon, and it'll be very interesting to see what it throws up. Of course, we will do absolutely anything we can to drive our recycling rates up, and in particular, the contamination in the recycler, which has been a particular problem, is very expensive. But we've made huge progress in a year. We've got that down from about 20% contamination to 13% and continuing to go down. So again, we're performing well there. But it'll be interesting to see what that study brings up.
Indeed.
I thank Councillor Usher for that question. It's an excellent suggestion. The MRF, the Materials Recovery Facility, Smugglers Way, is also state-of-the-art. It's a very impressive facility, highly automated, very, very effective, and I think many councils would kill to have something like that. And the same with the Energy from Waste facility, which I visited last week at Belvedere in Kent. Enormous place. It is in effect a 60 megawatt power station, enough power for 100,000 homes. Very impressive place. Excellent idea.
Question 17, Councillor MacDonald.
May I ask question 17 of the Cabinet Member for Finance Corporate Resources?
I thank the Councillor for his question. As the answer sets out, our current system is pretty obscure and it's not necessarily terribly consistent either. The new system should bring all the various grant schemes, with a couple of particular exceptions, together and give us much higher publicity for that and give the opportunity for proper political scrutiny.
Hopefully destroy the opaqueness and in some cases pseudo-elitism of some of the minor grants?
Well, I think what it's going to do is certainly to remove the opaqueness. It's all going to be there, clear, for everybody to see what goes on. At the moment, some of the other grants, well, it's interesting that large numbers of people within the town hall don't actually know these grants exist. So it will be much clearer to the public these grants are available, and also it will be clearer to us how that money is being spent. And as part of that, we're also making an attempt through the website and everything else to make it better known the other grant-making charities that are available to residents of the borough and are sometimes not used. We were talking about waste. The Western Riverside Environmental Fund, for example, does produce substantial grants, but very able a little bit more publicity for that sort of the more obscure grant-making bodies.
Right, question 18, and that's key workers in Wandsworth from Councillor McKinney.
Thank you. Question 18 to the Cabinet Member, please.
I'd like to thank Councillor McKinney for her question. As the answer says, we get £1.667 million from the government toward the discretionary housing payments. We did also agree to use money from the housing revenue account, but as of yet, that's not been required.
Supplementary
Yes,
question?
supplementary.
I've just been doing a little bit of research myself into this, and have been looking at a recent report, some research from the Citizens Advice Bureau, and they have mentioned that Wandsworth Borough Council has underspent its discretionary housing payments budget and is projected to send back £544,000 to central government. Why is so much being sent back when there's so much need for this to help people?
I'd like to thank the Councillor for her supplementary. The policy of the Council has always been that this is not really just, the DHB is not actually intended as just a straightforward handout to people, that they do have to engage with the Council. And so in order to receive discretionary housing payment, the claimants have to let us know what they're doing to help improve their own circumstances. That might be trying to get a job or retraining or looking for more suitably sized housing for themselves and their families. Those that do engage receive the payment, and the minority that don't.
Question 19, Formula E, Councillor Caddy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question 19 to the Cabinet Member.
I thank Councillor Caddy for the question. Well, I think this is, I mean, there's a lot of things we still need to sort out on this proposal, but it is a very exciting one. I think it's significant in all sorts of ways. It has the potential to obviously raise the profile of the borough and Battersea Park, not just nationally but internationally, so that's an exciting prospect. It obviously has huge income generating potential, but I think perhaps the most important thing is the potential for a very significant legacy in persuading people that electric cars really are a viable alternative for use in urban areas. There is a perception, right or wrong, at the moment that they are not particularly powerful, that they've got all sorts of problems and that they just don't work very well. And anyone who has seen these electric racing cars, which I and a number of colleagues have already seen, will instantly have those perceptions shattered by seeing these incredibly impressive vehicles. So I think that's perhaps the most exciting potential. But there are a few questions we've still got to answer.
Supplementary. The proposed race will obviously have a major effect on the park and people living nearby. How are we making sure that we engage with local people and groups to get their views and ideas about the proposals?
I thank Councillor Caddy for the supplementary. Well, this really is the essence of the things which we need to address. Pleased to say we've got a very full, frank, open discussion going on with the Friends of Battersea Park. And we have a public meeting which I've just been arranging today. Hasn't been publicly announced, but I can now. 6th of November. It'll be somewhere close to the park, and that will be an opportunity for everybody to air their concerns. I hope that we've gone some way already to addressing a large number of the concerns that the Friends have raised. I've met them several times, and they seem satisfied on certainly a lot of the responses. And we're also speaking to English Heritage and the Heritage Lottery Fund, who of course have put millions of pounds into the park in the last 10 years or so, and have a very close interest in what happens to it. But I think there too we've been able to reassure them that we've looked very, very carefully what the impacts will be, and there will certainly be no permanent damage to the park. We're very clear about that. We simply wouldn't allow it.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Well, the Cabinet Member may not be surprised to hear that I'm very pleased to hear that there is going to be a public meeting. One of the slightly disturbing features of the paper that came forward to the Community Services Committee is there were no comments within it from the Friends of Battersea Park. So I'm very glad to hear that that piece of consultation is being taken forward. Could he also assure us that the 3 ward councillors are going to be fully consulted over the proposals and how the whole thing is going to be implemented? It is a very exciting proposal. It has the aspects that he referred to in terms of promoting electric cars, and as the owner of a hybrid car, I'm very pleased to see electric cars are coming on, and my next car, I hope, will be an electric car. But can he assure us that the ward councillors will be fully involved in all the discussions about the set-up, the partial usage of the park, the non-usage of the park, and then the taking down as well?
I thank Councillor Cooper for that supplementary question. Well, I mean, the answer basically is yes, and they've already had the opportunity to get involved in any discussions. Very welcome to contact me at any time, Paul McHugh, who's leading on the project. And I would just say, with reference to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I believe I'm right in saying that I shared fully with the members of that committee not just a long letter from Francis Radcliffe of the Friends of Battersea Park, I think it ran to about 3 or 4 pages, but also my quick response to it, because I did want to get it out just before the committee meeting, where I responded to every single one of her concerns, and I shared that with the members of the committee, and I regard it as effectively a public document, so anyone who has it, feel free to share it.
We now turn to agenda item 9, report number 1, items for decision. I will now move reception of that report and ask the Council to approve the recommendations of each paragraph. Paragraph 1 is for decision, planning scheme of delegations. Is that agreed? Thank you. Paragraph 2, small grant scheme. Agreed. And paragraph 3, General Capital Programme. Is that approved? Thank you very much.